Hello, my name is Ashley Plaza, and today I will be doing a presentation on computer forensics. To start off this topic, we will be going over what is computer forensics and why is it important. Computer forensics is the retrieval, analysis, and use of digital evidence for a criminal or civil investigation. This means that computer forensic investigators are tasked with retrieving data from various sources while ensuring its integrity is not compromised. Once this data is retrieved, it is then taken for analysis, where investigators will determine any additional information and if the data found is related to the court case. If it is found admissible in court, then it can then be used to determine a verdict. So this data that is found can not only be found on computers, but anything able to store digital files. This can include phones, cloud storage, networks, tablets, GPS devices, smart TVs, any IoT device, pretty much. So anything that can store information, it can be used to gather data for these cases. So to gather and analyze evidence, investigators use a variety of tools such as disk images, file recovery, and network analysis. This helps them gather data and make sure it cannot be tampered with, that they cannot tamper with it, and that they can recover all the information possible to build the court case or provide evidence to build the court case. So the evidence that is found can include stored files, emails, search history, deleted files, social media posts, network logs, and more. Pretty much any information that can be found on a computer, on the web, in networks, and it has a relation to the court case can be used. So this evidence, if admissible in court, can help prove intent, or it can establish a timeline, link suspects to the crime, and prove innocence or guilt. Moving on, we will be talking about the technology used by computer forensic investigators and some of the items they may have in their labs. One of the most important technologies that they may use is a workstation. This is usually a specialized high-performance computer that allows them to do digital forensics. This can include data retrieval, file recovery, data analysis, disk imaging, and much more. Of the types of workstations, one of the most popular is the Fred workstation because it is made specifically for digital forensics. There is also the Windows workstation, which is a more general use version of the Fred workstation since they both run the Windows OS. And there's also the Mac workstation, which is made specifically to analyze devices that run the Mac OS. And we also have the forensic laptop, which is used for live data collection. This will be used on the field to gather information like volatile data like RAM or network connections that will be lost should the computer shut down. We also have different softwares that forensic investigators use, like FTK Imager Pro. This allows them to create copies of the digital storage mediums that they may be analyzing. It also allows them to preview files, capture memory, and do a lot more. There is also Blacklight, which is a good software to have if you're analyzing multiple different types of devices. It can analyze Mac OS, Windows, iOS, and different Android devices. There is also Magnet RAM Capture. This allows for the capture and analysis of RAM, since it is a volatile data that can be lost when a computer is shut down. There is also Magnet Axiom, which can gather and analyze data from smartphones, computers, cloud services, and vehicles, and it can recover some deleted files and allow you to review data and visualize it. There is also Wireshark, which allows for the capture and analysis of network traffic, specifically in regards to protocols and connections to the device. And we also have the sleuth kit, which can allow for analyzation of disk images, file recovery, and to review different files that may be on the device being analyzed. Investigators also use a variety of hardware tools, one of the most important being the write blocker, which allows for data to be viewed from a device in a read-only format. It does not allow for any writing to the device, and this ensures that the device stays unchanged from when it was initially um, taken in for analysis. This makes sure that the device device evidence is able to be used in the court case. For these write blockers, you also usually need adapters to connect them to different devices. And these adapters will also be needed for the next item, which is the forensic disk duplicators. The forensic disk duplicator allows for you to make a bit-for-bit copy of a storage device. So everything that is in the first storage device, you can view it on the copy, and that way you don't have the possibility of tampering with the original device. There's also the Celebrite UFED, which allows for the extraction, decryption, and analysis of data from mobile devices. This can also include SIM cards and GPS devices. So now for some of the items that may be found in labs. One of the most important, or some of the most important ones, would be evidence lockers, evidence bags, and in particular, Faraday bags. These make sure that any devices or evidence that is being analyzed is secure and cannot be accessed by unauthorized persons or any wireless signals in regards to the Faraday bag. So you put a device into the Faraday bag, and that way signals from outside are blocked, and there cannot be like an outside wipe command or any tampering with the device from someone who would want to delete the data that is on the device. There's also regular office supplies and cameras for documentation purposes. It is very important as an investigator to keep a track of how evidence is being handled, what evidence looked like when it was brought in and afterwards, to make sure that it's completely admissible for the court case. For this topic, I also wanted to include a real-life court case that can showcase how computer forensic investigators' evidence can be used to determine a verdict for a court case. The case we'll be looking at today is Singer David Anthony Burke being charged with the capital murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. To give a brief overview of the case, the defendant, Mr. Burke, is being accused of bringing Celeste to his home via Uber, murdering her, and then purchasing tools to dismember her body. And also later on, he disposed of her personal identification in another location. So I separated the evidence for the case into three main categories, which includes messaging and file data, location data, and transaction data. So to start with the first category, we have text exchanges between the victim and the defendant, which show a sexual relationship between the two. We also have a text argument the day before all of the victim's cellular data ceased. In this argument, the victim threatened to release damaging information regarding the defendant right before his tour. We also have text messages after the Uber drop-off that show the defendant asking the victim for her location. After that, we also have continued messages to the victim from the defendant while he was driving to another county. 2 additional messages were sent the following day, right before the defendant ceased all contact with the victim. There was also a significant amount of child sexual abuse material found on the defendant's iPhone and his iCloud account. So investigators would have had to analyze the data from both the iPhone and the iCloud account to determine when these messages were sent, what they included, if there were any calls made during that time, their location while these messages were being sent. So this can be used to prove intent of the crime and also show that he wanted to cover his tracks and make it seem like he didn't do what he did and that he was asking her this whole time where she was when in reality she was already gone. Moving on to the second category, we have a surveillance video of the defendant being the last person to drive the Tesla where her dismembered body was later found. We also have geographical location data showing that the defendant left his home right after she was dropped off, and he was shown driving to another county. Also on May 8th, he returned to this location that he went to before, where her personal identification was later found. So to gather this evidence, forensic investigators would have had to look at surveillance data and analyze it to ensure that the defendant is the one shown in the video and that it is his Tesla that is being viewed, and to make sure that he was the last person that actually drove this vehicle before it was towed and taken to the tolling location. To track his movements, to see when he left for the other county, they would also have to use cell tower logs and cell site simulators to kind of track his phone movement as he was driving. Then we have transaction data. So the defendant ordered an Uber to take the victim to his home. He also ordered a shuttle via Postmates to his home. On May 1st, he ordered 2 chainsaws to his home via Amazon using a fake name. And again on May 5th, he ordered a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and a blue inflatable pool to his home via Amazon using the fake name. And then later on, again, he purchased a burn cage to his house via Amazon. So investigators would have had to track his payment transactions, transaction logs, and browser history to determine that the transactions made, even if they were made under a fake name, were actually related to him, and that they were made by him using his financial credentials and all that. Even though the purchase was made under a fake name, they would have been able to link it back to him using browser data that likely stores usernames or emails and stuff like that, and also IP address tracking to link the orders under the fake name to his Wi-Fi router. All of this is used in the court to show that he had very clear intentions and that he tried to cover his tracks, and the evidence on his devices showed that he was the one who committed these crimes. So computer forensic investigators are very important when it comes to cases like this where all the evidence can be found on the digital devices involved. That is going to be all for my presentation. Thank you for your time, and here I have some sources that I used to gather data for my presentation. Again, thank you.